I'm the only white face in this area. You don't belong here. Stop, I'll shoot you in the back.
What's going on, guys? Tonight we have a special episode of Locked Up with Copville. This is going to be called Copville Breakdowns, where we take current events that are developing and we break them down. My co-host for these breakdowns will be none other than the GOAT, Jerry Wurms. Jerry, thanks for coming.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yep. So recently in the news, it's been the George Floyd was obviously one of the biggest things in law enforcement, probably second to Rodney King. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we have the George Floyd incident, May 25th, 2020. Minneapolis burned. There's documentaries about that. Recently in the news, Elon Musk and Ben Shapiro have called for President Trump to pardon Derek Chauvin, which creates a massive controversy depending on what side you are on. I will say, since the change of kind of the wokeism has left and the change of the guard of the administration, just the fact that Elon Musk said that, if he would have said that 2 or 3 years ago, I think there'd already be riots. So the fact that there haven't been is pretty interesting to me. But I'm going to turn over you, Jerry, right away. I know you've done a lot of research in this case, and you know a lot of stuff. So give me your overall synopsis of the incident with Derek Chauvin and George Floyd and your thoughts.
Well, my thoughts are that there were a lot of different things that took place during the trial. I think a lot of evidence was suppressed. You know, there were several different autopsies that were completely different in narratives. I think the jury, prosecutors, the chief of police, everybody was so afraid because this turned into just a big race issue.
Yeah.
They were afraid that the riots would, take place and that the city's already burned before, but it's going to completely overtake the city, and this would just cause a huge problem.
Yeah.
So with all these different things that are going, and now there's new evidence coming forward that now I think they're going to try to take this to the Supreme Court to see if it either have a new trial or overturn it.
Yeah. So what I did earlier, I'm going to read some of these. I posted on my Instagram story, and I threw a little bait out there for everybody to see what their thoughts were on the situation. So I posted what are your thoughts on the pardoning? I'm going to read some of the responses I've got. His knee didn't kill him. He was a shit cop and should have been fired, but he's not guilty of murder. Did he do anything wrong? Dude's a dipshit, but wasn't the cause of death. Don't do it. Let's have more riots and start crop dusting cities like within California. That guy's pretty wild. Because he was wrongfully convicted, should no longer be a cop, though. Retrial needs to happen. Dude was a sacrificial lamb. Floyd died of drugs. I mean, they're all pretty much obviously I run a pro law enforcement page. So across the board on the law enforcement side is the let him go. He didn't do anything wrong. I don't agree he didn't do anything wrong, but I don't agree with where he sits and what happened. What is your take on that as far as where he sits and what happened and the tactics and what went down?
Well, when the thing started off, a little crowd started to form. And when you have a situation like that where you start getting like a mob mentality, as a cop or a supervisor, and he was a senior officer with some other younger police officers there, they should have just taken him right out of that area because EMS was very late in responding. And after they weren't showing up one time, you get him out of that situation. That way you don't have the mob mentality starting to form. So he's guilty of that, which is bad judgment. The other thing that bothers me about this whole thing is that they have in their manual I read about this, it's called maximum restraint technique. It's called MRT. It's in their police manual with illustrations on how to restrain somebody that's acting violent.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular thing that they did is restraining him. The way I saw the body cameras, it depends what angle you're looking at. If you're looking at it from the angle of where these people were filming it from their cell phones from the curb, they didn't have the correct angle. So it did kind of look like the knee was in his neck. But the body cameras, which the cops had on, they weren't allowed to be shown in court. This particular manual was not allowed into evidence. And
Okay.
from what I could see, the knee was in their shoulder blade, and that was the proper
So
technique in the
you're
manual.
talking about the manual. I'm going to jump that right in there. So as you can see, this was part of that manual, and here that shows like looks like the head, but that is showing the similar technique that was used during the arrest of George Floyd. That's right out of the manual for the Minneapolis Police Department. Now there are some words there, and it does talk about quickly getting him up and some other things, but to say like that wasn't taught at all, and I think that's important for a jury to see whether it was applied right is one thing, or the length, and everybody's going to order the length of how long it stayed there. The fact that they were shown that exact technique should be considered by a jury. I mean, I think it's bullshit that that they would withhold something like that. So,
So,
I mean,
so yeah, so they had illustrations there from the body camera. I saw their knees
yeah.
were in the guy's shoulder
So
blade.
here's
It wasn't on his neck.
I'll bring this one in. This is the old
Okay.
famous picture from the side. And I think that picture is the one that most of America sees, all the memes, all the jokes. There's actually there's a sign in the background that shows the gas prices, and people will post that picture and say, completely not acknowledge that what's going on there, and say, boy, I'd really like the gas prices to go back to this. The economy's really choked up, and they'll make some like jokes about it. But that's the most famous picture I think you'll see of what had occurred, and that is a civilian picture that was taken, I believe, from the side there. And I don't think you can draw, I mean, I don't know draw much conclusion from that. You can't tell the weight distribution, how his weight is distributed between the two legs, how much pressure is actually going on. Does it look good? No, it looks like fucking shit. But you don't know the answers to those questions.
So we have an issue that was never brought up in the trial.
Yeah.
And now I think there's a one of the state attorneys that is now kind of siding with law enforcement that this needs to be looked at, and it's like almost new evidence that needs to be presented.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that would be my biggest argument, is that there was no chance after Tamir Rice was like the first one that started the Black Lives Matter movement. And for people who don't know, Tamir Rice was the 12-year-old kid that was at a park. He had what nobody knew was a BB gun, and throughout a 5 or 6 minute video, he's pointing the gun, he's playing with the gun, he's waving the gun, and I believe the police got a call, and it develops very quickly from there. But they come sliding up, they jump out, they give him orders, he presents the gun or raises the gun, and the dude, and they end up killing him. 12-year-old black kid, BB gun. And that was the first one where they were both found not guilty. They were cleared, but I think one of them got fired. They went and dug up something that he had lied on his application about something that happened in a previous agency. One guy was fired and one guy stayed. And that was like, and Trayvon Martin, I believe, was before that, and which Trayvon Martin wasn't even a law enforcement contact. That was a quasi security guard in a residential neighborhood. But that Tamir Rice started it. And then the reason I bring that up is one of the articles I watched on video earlier talked about they connected to me. It's just a big connection. Like it's never an isolated, like with a criminal, every incident is isolated. You can't go back, just like in this case where they omitted George Floyd's history. You can talk about all the bullshit he did and all the fucking crime he committed. This incident's isolated. But when it comes to the flip side, when the police are involved in it, all cops are bad, and every shooting is connected. We're all racist. We're all pieces of shit, and we're motivated. We're going to kill as many people as we want. And they don't look at it isolated. It's always, we're all grouped into one thing. So like those incidents led up, and then this was the next one. And then this one exploded. Obviously cities burned and shit hit the fan, but there is no way on God's earth that dude got any sort of a fair trial or fair shake on this. And that's what I think the biggest argument would be from anybody, is at the minimum, this dude deserves a chance to go back through this with all this evidence. What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, like I said, he made some, critical errors as far as judgment was concerned. But you have to once again How is anything premeditated when they got a call? The police were called to the scene because he was supposedly passing, fake money, counterfeit 20.
Yeah.
So how would the police even know he was there unless they got called?
No,
So
it's always that way.
yeah. So they're called to the scene. They're dealing with the guy. He's on drugs to begin with. He's belligerent, causing a scene before they even started to investigate this whole thing.
I've got some. Let me just roll. I got some body cam here. Let me just roll that in there. Let's add that in and get over here to the video. And we will roll. This is when he's in custody, and then they're starting to deal with his ignorance.
Look at that. They're not even listening. Look at it. We can fix it, but not
So he's refusing to get in the car. He's resisting. He's handcuffed.
Bad, man. Man, I don't want to try to win. I don't want to try to win. I don't want to win. I'm claustrophobic. You ain't gonna win. I'm claustrophobic. I got anxiety. I don't want to do nothing to them. Man, I'm scared as fuck, man.
So he's scared. He's been arrested like 50 times, but this time he's scared.
Okay.
Which this creates his own, deliberating. This creates his own increased heart rate, his own all that stuff going on. Obviously, there's a ton of drugs in the system, but he's creating the situation.
And the paranoia is setting in because of the drugs.
Yeah, exactly. He gets in the car right here and drives away. We're not sitting here.
See, at this point, he should be put in the car regardless of where they want
Yeah, you
to
gotta
go.
You gotta stop doing that at some point. And that's a critical error. He's in the crowd, everybody's watching. This happened a million times down the that's it. And once he gets in, I wouldn't let him out. If he's in at some point, almost all the way.
Please, man. Please. No.
At this point, there's a few police officers there. One could have pulled him in from the other side, shut the door, and then he's in.
Well, if you look across, they're trying to get him in here.
Well, shut the door.
Here comes the door.
Okay.
Now, this guy makes a mistake. I don't know why that door's shut.
They should be driving away right now.
Well, they got him. Now they go to the other side.
Yeah.
So, training issues. That's why jiu-jitsu guys train like vehicle inspection and vehicle around the vehicle how to get people in. So now you get the door back open.
There's 3 cops there right now. They're not controlling the situation.
4 with the guy in body cam. So they're a fucking disaster at this point. So again, disaster. Yes.
I can't breathe.
No, he's already I can't breathe it. So it's long before any knees or anything. We're not. I actually did it earlier. There's like 4 or 5 I can't breathe before we get to the ground.
What's going on?
So this is the disaster tactics. This is disaster on all their part for not being trained, not knowing what the fuck they're doing all day long. This is a fucking.
On the ground.
So I don't know why are they putting him on the ground now?
Well, he's kicking. He just kicked him. I don't know. Oh, so that's where it ends right there. And then it gets all these fucking ads. So let me come back here. Let me remove that. Yeah. So that is stupid. What they fucking did was dumb, not well trained, and not. I wouldn't do that. I've had to shut the door on people's feet. Maybe their head gets in the way. I'm not trying to hurt anybody, but you have a felony, and the Constitution and the state constitution and all that shit you said when you swore in gives you the right to forcefully, by any force necessary, reasonably, to get him in the car. He should have had, hey, if his feet are in the way, his feet are in the way. If his head's in the way, well, yeah, you're not going to slam the door too on his head, but
Mike, 90% of his body was in the car at one point. So,
that is
90% of his body, they shut the door on one side, 2 cops on the other side kind of squeeze him back in, shut the door.
Yeah.
Go, take off.
It's a fucking nightmare at that point, and it's not going well. And so I want to pull up, before I pull up the autopsy, I want to pull up the statutes for the state of Minnesota. And let's see, screen sharing. I want to, what the fuck is it? All right, so I want to go here, share screen. Let's get the statutes. All right, there we go. All right, so I know they're kind of small on your end when I put them up here, but I'm going to go over the statutes here. So we have, what he was charged with was second degree murder in the second degree. So I'm going to read that. What's required? Intentional murder. This is called second degree intentional murder on drive-by shootings. Whoever does either of the following is guilty of murder of the second degree and may be sentenced to up to 40 years. Causes the death of a human being with the intent to affect the death of that person or another, but without premeditation. So they charged him and
He
said
was
that
convicted of
convicted.
it. Yeah.
He should have been charged with it. There should have been no. So they deemed not only in the charging document that the incident was intentional. All that fighting around, all that bullshit, all that stuff that happened, crowd forming, putting him on the ground, dumb, putting the knee on his head, dumb. He painted a dumb picture, a real dumb picture, and a really untrained picture for himself by doing that. But they said that he intended to kill George Floyd. That is absolutely insane. Tried and convicted. So there's that one. So then he was also convicted and tried of third-degree murder. In Minnesota, third-degree murder is whoever, without intent to affect the death of any person, without intent, causes the death of another by perpetrating an act imminently dangerous to others and evincing a deprived mind without regard for human life. So again, that one gets maybe closer, but it's still, to me, like if he's on his head, not choking him, and his knee just happens to be holding him there, he's not doing an act that could cause your death. So I don't think he can be guilty of that. I mean, what do you think, Jerry? I mean,
No,
you saw it.
he made some critical mistakes, but not with any intent to kill him at all. And there's no way he wanted this individual to die.
And that one goes a little different from intent. And then the third thing he was convicted of was manslaughter in the second degree. So for manslaughter in the second degree, a person who caused the death of another by any of the following means is guilty of manslaughter in the second degree and can be sentenced to prison for not more than 10 years. The person's culpable negligence, whereby the person creates an unreasonable risk and consciously takes chances of causing the death or great bodily harm or another. They have an obviously huge shooting issue up there, because every one of these statutes has an additional part of it that talks about guns. One of those gun-free states that has every statute has an issue with guns, obviously, because every single one of them has a gun caveat. So the third degree murder basically is like he's culpably negligent. And I guess it comes down again to, if he didn't choke him, was he negligent? And I think the flip side to that is, the only devil's advocate side that I hear from people is, he stayed there 9 minutes, didn't let him up, didn't check him, didn't do a sternum rub. And I think they said he died. They thought he died like 3 minutes into that knee, and he stayed there like many more minutes. That's the only one in my brain where I go, man, if I'm holding the guy down and all of a sudden he's like a dead fish and he's not moving anymore, that's where my brain goes, maybe I should have checked on him. So that one for me is tough. What do you think?
Absolutely, that's some negligence right there, but procedurally, it's, they just messed up. I mean, and that's what they're guilty of. They're guilty of not following proper procedures.
Yeah.
I don't think any police officer in that situation had no intention of wanting him to die.
Do you think if that was in a red state, it would have went that way?
Maybe not. Depending on the atmosphere, we're talking about the summer of 2020. And
that was the height, like that
Yeah.
launched Black Lives Matter into.
Absolutely.
You had cops taking knees and chiefs taking knees and
Congress,
influencers.
the whole Congress took
Yeah, the whole
knees.
Congress
right
took a
on,
knee.
right on the steps of Congress. They all took knees.
You know what? I'm gonna pull up. Give me 1 second. I want to pull up another video. What's his name? Oh man, I watched it. I can't think of his name. I just now popped in my head. I said, you know what? I think I sent it.
While you're looking for that,
Good,
I'm gonna
good.
add
How about it? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I highly recommend that everybody YouTube this. It's a little over an hour. It's a documentary called The Fall of Minneapolis, and it's narrated by Liz Collin. Liz Collin was a CBS News anchor in the Minneapolis area. Her husband was a lieutenant with the Minneapolis Police Department. and he was also the president of the police union. So after this George Floyd incident happened, obviously she was not following the narrative that CBS wanted her to follow. So she was actually kind of forced out to resign, and her husband was forced to leave. And then Liz, along with a guy named J.C. Centric, who's a documentary filmmaker, he's a former police officer. And under, I guess they call it Alpha News, they made the documentary, and she was the narrator. You've got to watch this documentary because it brings up different things that people are never aware of during the trial. There were so many different problems during the trial that this documentary points out, and you got to see it. Absolutely.
Okay, I'm gonna play this video I saw on Instagram the other day because it just, I'm just gonna play it and we'll see what. All right, and we're gonna go add to stage. You might not be able to see it great, but you should be able to hear it. Let's see what he's got to say.
When last time police done killed a nigga?
That shit happens a lot.
But
It may not be George Floyd media status, but that shit happens a lot.
okay. So I often look at those statistics. The police shoot more mentally ill white men than anybody. The white boy mama who done called the police on him because he had to have. So if you look at the statistics, the police on the average shoot more white people than they do black people. I'm a guy that's big on statistics. Police shootings, and I want people to really hear me, homie. Police shootings, killing the unarmed nigga, is the least of our problems in America. It's the least of our problems. They ain't shot now nigga on his way to school. They ain't shot no nigga getting off work. They ain't shot no nigga in a high visibility construction vest. They ain't shot a nigga in no suit. They ain't shot now nigga with his pants pulled up and his shirt tail tucked in. They ain't shot it. No. When I watched the country not have no outrage for Tamir Rice, there was no need for me to speak. There was no need for me to speak on police brutality, because police brutality is small compared to black on black homicide rates.
I'll stop it there. So that's I saw that the other day and I found that interesting. That it's very accurate, and the accurate part that I'm gonna say when I say it's very accurate, the percentages and statistics show that far more white people get killed every year by police than black. And I know some people say it's disproportionate because of the amount of white people to black people, but the number one homicide suspect in a black homicide is another black person. I'm not trying to dive down the race hole, but you go into like Chicago and some of those big cities, the statistics are insane. I got an app that actually tracks Chicago. I haven't looked at it in quite a while, so it's going to take me a minute to find it. And where the hell is it? Oh, here we go. So just to give you an idea, this app tracks it real time. In the month of March in the city of Chicago, 32 people have been killed and shot. 94 people have been shot and wounded. 126 total shot and 37 homicides in the month of March, which ends tomorrow.
Yes.
For the year, so we go 3 months, January, February, March, 89 shot and killed, 280 shot and wounded, 369 people shot, 102 homicides in the city. And that's the small area. It's got a breakdown of the small city of Chicago. So violence in that area that's one city. And obviously heavily black populated areas that have the statistics. It breaks down the areas. I'm not just saying the whole city. But where that leads me is that's what danger looks like. That's what fear looks like. To get out, go out, little babies, they break it down by age. If I go in further in the app, it'll say like how old the victims were. I see 2-year-old in a carriage. I see 10-year-old at the park, that stuff. And it doesn't I am a firm believer if a police officer shoots somebody unjustly, they should fry, because we are held to a higher standard. We are held to a much, we're trained, we're prepared to do critical things that other people don't get paid to do. So when an officer uses negligence, like what's hot right now is another one my wife was looking at, is the cops that like to jump in front of the car before they're taken off and then claim self-defense and shoot the guy. Like, that's nonsensical to me. You don't get in front of a car when it's driving. That's like, you learn that like when you don't touch the stove. But in this scenario, nobody screams outrage over, where's the politicians kneeling down for the 102 people killed in Chicago this year? Just one city.
Where's Al Sharpton?
Yeah.
Where is Benjamin Crump with the outrage for all these young black males that are being shot and killed in Chicago on a daily basis? Where's the outrage from them?
Yeah, and
okay, it doesn't fit the narrative because because Al Sharpton is a race baiter, so that doesn't fit his narrative. But when it comes to something like the George Floyd incident, he's the first one there.
Yeah.
And he's the one in front of the microphone, in front of the press, and causing all kinds of issues.
When it's legit, and I do it a lot, TikTok cops, other cops, like, I have no problem. I call myself out for being a moron. So I know what it's like. I'm a great moron example. I do stupid things, but I hold myself accountable. So when cops do dumb shit, they deserve to be held accountable. But when you reach to these and this one is, again, there's definitely some problems with this, but it could be a clear cut. The guy's got a chainsaw and a machine gun, and the cops shoot him, and somebody's got a problem with the way it went down. Like, always, always, always. So that's what drives me nuts. Is let's be if we're going to be consistent as a nation, one nation under God, we have to be consistent down the middle. And when cops fuck up, put them in the electric chair. If they kill somebody and it's premeditated and it's a crime like everybody else, they deserve to fry. And so do the people that kill other people. But you can't just weasel through. And that's essentially what happens. It happens, happens in the agencies too, when guys get targeted, IA, stuff like that. You can't weasel through the press, because if they drive away and George Floyd dies at the hospital later and he doesn't put his neck, nobody's going to even remember. Nobody's going to even talk about that. That's never happened. So again, do I think Derek Chauvin did everything right? No, he did a lot of things wrong. Do I think he was trained well? No, he was a moron. Should he lose his job? Absolutely. Did he murder George Floyd? My answer is no. Jerry, what do you think?
Absolutely. He should be, and I think you need to bring up the point. He was, he's in prison and he got stabbed 22 times. He's still alive. He's lucky to be alive.
Yeah.
So should this guy lose his life over this? No. He was a bad cop, but he wasn't a murderer.
Yep.
And the thing about when you look at all these situations, and it comes down to one word: compliance. If these people comply, none of this stuff happens. Yeah. All these so-called white cops shooting black motorists, if they comply from the beginning of the stop, or in this situation, if George Floyd would have just said, okay, I had a phony 20, I tried to pass it. You guys got me. Let me go to jail, and I'll just fight it later in court or whatever. None of this would take place. Nobody wants to comply.
I agree.
And they escalate it to the point where now you're in a firefight, and it gets to the point where people wind up dying over nothing.
And I agree. That's the perfect world scenario, and I 1,000,000% agree. Like, all the injuries would stop, all the shootings everything would stop. That's kind of like a fairy tale world. So the devil's advocate to that argument of yours, which I agree with, would be me saying, unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So what do we do as police to get better? We train. The dude's arms were barely sticking out of his sleeves, so doesn't look like he's in great shape. Maybe he is. I don't know. Didn't look like they really had a plan or a control plan, or they had trained like any type of putting people in the back of the car in a tactical way, control, putting a handcuffed guy on the ground and choosing that move when you already had him, like you said, 90% of his body was in the car. That's like you just uncuffed him, stuck him back in the store, and said, all right, we're going to just start from the top. Like that didn't make sense. So a lot of things went wrong and a lot of things were done wrong, but it didn't rise to the level of murder. Now I'm going to pull up and talk about some of the autopsy stuff that was in there. And we know there were multiple autopsies done. We talked about that. And I'm going to bring up that part first. So the first part is, I'm just going to touch on this independent and the current autopsy, or the first autopsy that were done. So here in this article I bring up is, I'm just going to read this paragraph. The family's autopsy, family did an autopsy and the medical examiner did an autopsy. The family's autopsy differs from the autopsy as described in a criminal complaint against the officer. The autopsy included effects of being restrained along with underlying health issues as a potential intoxicants in Floyd's system, but also said it found nothing to support a diagnosis of traumatic asphyxiation or strangulation. The family's autopsy said he didn't have heart disease and he had been healthy, and then he died from asphyxiation, which I don't know. That's two pretty glaring differences in an autopsy. That, I mean, I know some things like CQB tactics. We always argue that there's 10 million different types of way to clear a building. I can't think there's very many ways to do an autopsy at this point. Like, it seems the same. So we have that. What do you think about the two autopsies being way off?
Well, the thing about it is, what I understand from what I've done research, he would have died regardless of whether the cops were there or not. He had enough fentanyl in his system with heart disease. I think he also had AIDS. I think he also had, sickle cell, I think they found in him. He had so many medical issues that supposedly he was going to probably pass away
So
regardless.
Let's talk about that. I got the autopsy right here. Let's add that in, and I'm going to go down the autopsy. It was done 6 days after the death by Dr. Andrew Baker. So he talks about any blunt force injuries. So that's an interesting fact. They said they choked him. He had blunt force injuries to the forehead, face, and upper lip. He had injuries to the lips. He had blunt force injuries to the shoulders, hands, elbows, and legs. And he had a pattern of contusions around his wrists. That was all the blunt trauma or any trauma that was noticed. Natural diseases. He had arteriosclerotic heart disease, severe. The family said he was healthy. Hypertensive heart disease, clinical history of hypertension, and he had left pelvic tumor. Non-life-threatening injuries. No facial, oral, or conjunctival, whatever that word is. I'm not even going there. No injuries. Here it is. No injuries of anterior muscles of neck or laryngeal structures. No injuries to the neck. No scalp issues, no chest wall injuries, no rib fractures.
So this is the official autopsy.
This is the official autopsy. He had
if he would have died from asphyxiation of a knee to his neck, that would have shown there.
So then we go to the blood in the drug screens. He had fentanyl, norfentanyl, methamphetamine, THC, and tested positive for cocaine and caffeine.
So then 4 drugs in his system.
4 drugs. So when I come down here let me scroll down, that just covers all the weights of his organs and all that stuff. And we get down here to the drug stuff. So again, positive blood test for caffeine, positive blood test for THC, positive blood test for methamphetamine, positive blood test for fentanyl, norfentanyl, and then he had a urine test, cannabinoids, amphetamines, fentanyl, and morphine. So that's all the stuff that was in his system.
With a heart problem.
And a tumor. And I didn't look at the sickle. Hold on. You're right. Let me go right back to that. There was, at the top, it talked about the very top. Right. The finding of sickled appearing cells in many of the autopsy tissue sections prompted the test. This quantitative result is indicative of sickle cell trait. Red blood cells in the individual with sickle cell trait are known as sickle, and the descendants, peripheral smear. We was reviewed an expert. This review found no evidence of. So he did not have sickle cell. I know that was one of the things people were throwing around. So he did not have that. So and again, I'll say it. even if he had all those things and he was going to die, knee across the neck would still be homicide. But there were no reported injuries to his esophagus, his throat, in an autopsy. So I don't know how you can be choked to death without petechia in your eyes, because you'll be choking. I know, huge deal when you're being choked, and no injuries to your neck. So what do you think about that?
It's, it's disturbing because he was basically a sacrificial lamb. That's what he was.
They canceled Paw Patrol. They canceled Paw Patrol. They can't anything cop. And I think of all the stuff, all these cops, all these leaders kneeling, all these cops, these social media influencer TikTok cops were making boohoo cry videos about George Floyd and all that. And I remember the lady spelled breathe wrong. She made her paint her face everything and did this huge video, and she spelled the word wrong. But it became I can't breathe. It was everywhere. And he obviously said it multiple times before the neck issue. So my question is, was he already having the effects, like you said, the effects of the massive amount of narcotics in his system that was causing that? And you said it earlier when you talked about the drugs were setting, the delirium was kicking in, and the paranoia from the drugs. He knows he's going in the car. He's going to be jonesing, and he's on uppers, downers, every which way. So he knows what's coming next is a long ride in the car, booking, a cell. Nobody wants to deal with that. So that stuff has to increase your heart rate, increases all that stuff. So
Anxiety. I mean, he was suffering from anxiety at that point. On top of that, with all his previous arrests, maybe he was on probation and he was going to be violated and do more time. Who knows?
Yeah. And again, he where was I going with that? My brain went, because I said again and again, I hate saying it. He was, the charges are garbage. So if we take all what we just talked about, he should never even been charged with second-degree murder. That's out the window. There was never an intentional act caused by that guy. At any time during that incident did that guy go, I'm going to kill this dude. Like, I'm going to kill him. Like, I'm sick of his shit. I'm going to kill him. Out the window. Even the second degree is, I think, a little too much detail. So if anything,
more than manslaughter. Manslaughter.
He was going to get a fair trial. He should have been charged with the second degree manslaughter, but that only carries 10 years. So they were never going to do that. He should have been charged with second degree manslaughter, and then a jury should have saw all the evidence. It needed a change of venue. There's no way that dude should have went to trial in Minneapolis. That dude was guilty as that was going on. He was done. There was no coming back from that in that state with that leadership. He was done, and they stacked the charges on him. And I think he's terrible at what he did. His tactics, his decisions to pull him back out, all those things were terrible. It did not rise to the level of criminal intent.
And all of the other cops were charged there.
Yes.
They were all charged with some.
I get the duty to intervene in Florida. That's what they call it, and they've tried to throw that around at people at my agency willy nilly. And during one investigation, 3 people had the ability to intervene, and they only went after one of them. So it's like, how did one person not intervene if there were 3 other people? So that's kind of garbage too. In that case, if he was choking him, if he was hitting him like Rodney King hitting him, then all those guys there deserve to go down too. You have a duty to intervene and stop. I think one guy actually did say we should get I have to check it. My wife mentioned it, that one guy did say maybe we should get a reposition. I think he got tunnel vision. I think he was maybe even scared. I mean, he's got a crowd and there's all that stuff going on. They're not supported. It's a completely unsupported, agency. So tunnel vision probably kicks in, lack of training, and he freezes, which happens a lot. A lot of cops freeze in that, get down, get back, get down, get back, and then they end up getting killed. I think he froze. I think he made a terrible decision, but he did not kill George Floyd.
And, when you going back to the trial, if you look back at the Rodney King trial, when he was the first, when those cops were acquitted, the city went berserk. And I think a lot of the jurors were threatened. The judges threatened everybody, so I think the jurors had that in the back of their mind. If we don't find this, if we don't find him guilty, I got to move, am I going to be threatened? What's going to happen to my family? So I think
Yes.
all that was going on in these jurors' minds.
And you don't know how
So,
deep the corruption went. Like, was his attorney in on it? Was would they cook everything? Like, when you get into that, like, they had to convict him. There was no option. There was no other option. They're never going to get tough on crime. And in order to stop the riots and stop the problems, you'd have to get tough on crime. That wasn't going to happen. So,
well, during the documentary, they showed the police department, they gave up the precinct.
so
You know,
ironically, I'm trying to get a guy. I don't know if he's going to come on. He ended up moving to Florida. His information was compromised when they took the police department over, and he ended up getting severely injured on duty up there. I think he got hit with a brick in the head, caused like massive damage. He had to retire. But also, they got the officers' information from like records, and were going and showing up. Mobs were showing up at these cops' houses to try to kill them, harm them, and all this crazy stuff was going up there, and there was nobody to help them. So they give up the police department. They allowed all the records to get taken and all the police officers' information to get taken. And then the mob started showing up at cops' houses and trying to, I don't know how deep it got. They suppressed all that. They kept that shit quiet. All they wanted to do was pump, the trial. But I think it's unfortunate.
and how much money did the city have to give the Floyd family?
And here's the interesting thing. I just read before we started, 2 other families of arrestees that Chauvin used the same technique on, the technique we saw. They paid a lot. They paid a lot out, like 10 millions and millions of dollars, to make them 2 families go away from arrests that caused no injuries, no problems, just the fact that they have pictures or body cam of him doing the same technique. So my stand is, at minimum, if he was going to be charged with a crime and you're going to go to trial, he would have been charged with the 2nd-degree manslaughter and given an opportunity to have all the evidence presented. So when I say he's not guilty, he's not guilty of what he was charged with. And I have to defer on the 3rd charge because I don't think his trial was fair. So in my perfect world, they dumped the 2nd-degree and 3rd-degree homicide, and they retry him for the 2nd-degree manslaughter charge with all the information. That would be my take.
Yes, all the evidence needs to be presented, all of it. And this whole thing with the autopsy, where the family's autopsy took precedent over the coroner's autopsy, so that was another issue. So, like you said, when you read, he had no medical issues. He's considered a healthy guy.
Yeah.
Well,
he's been in jail for what, 3 or 4 years now.
Yeah, and listen, he's paid.
Well, that's where I was going with it, because I don't want
Yeah.
people to sit here and think he deserves to go in prison any longer. So in that perfect scenario, if convicted, I would give him time served. So so to summarize it all, he should be out of jail. He should be out of jail. The minimum, like he should be out. He shouldn't be in jail.
And he'll never. I mean, obviously, no other department would touch him. He would never get a job back. He'd never be a police officer. Take away certification.
I agree.
Yeah. So all that, but he doesn't deserve to be in jail any longer. And I would rather see. I think I'd rather see proper charges against him with all the evidence, as opposed to a straight pardon.
Yeah, I mean, but again, he would get, in a perfect world, what would a normal, non-controversial 2nd-degree homicide, maximum 10 years? I bet your everyday Minnesota person maybe gets 2 years out of that, if you're lucky, maybe some probation. So he's probably served that. But as the way it stands, I stand on the fact that he was treated unfair. He doesn't deserve to be in jail where he sits, how he sits. He definitely did things wrong. It was not done well. But I, in a million years, will never be convinced that he had any criminal intent. He had negligence, and cops need to pay for negligence. I agree that, especially in today's world, it's just, there's too much training out there for you. There's too many things, jiu-jitsu, tactics. You can even go get Jerry's nunchucks if you need them. There's a lot of things out there you can do, but that wasn't the answer. So I'm gonna let you wrap it up, and then I'll wrap it up. Jerry, any final thoughts for this?
Well, I just would hate to see if this does get revisited. I would hate to see this spark off because we're coming up on summer. I
Yep.
mean, March, we're going into April. I'd hate to see this kick off and start a whole new race issue
Yep.
that would start riots and things burning. If especially since Elon Musk made that statement.
Yep.
Are they going to start burning? Well, they've already started trying to burn down all the Tesla dealerships. Is this going to?
That's a whole nother
continue?
episode. Yeah.
Is this going to continue more?
The liberal tree huggers now hate electric cars.
Yeah. Now I would hate to see this kick off a whole nother summer of 2020. That's my concern.
All right, Jerry, I appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. So this was an episode of Breakdowns with Copville and Jerry. And what we're going to do is, if God forbid there's something that happens wild tomorrow, we're going to jump right back on here and break it down. We're going to try to get ahead of it. We're going to try to be factual. We're not going to fabricate and just try to jump to conclusions, but we want to break down current events and the things that are hot in the news. And if anybody has a contrary opinion to this and wants to discuss it, I am absolutely open to talking to everybody. I'll have you on. I will absolutely listen to your side of everything, and we can talk cordially and break down everything. But I appreciate you guys tuning in to Breakdowns with Copville and Jerry. Have a great night. Take care.
Okay, take care. Bye.
I'm the only white face in this area. You don't belong here. Stop, I'll shoot you in the back.